Hello and welcome to Community Conversations About Kindness. My name is Kelly Knox and I'm the host of today's show. So the premise of this show is to have conversations with three guests about what it means to be kind to ourselves, our families, and the community at large. Today's guests are Julie LaFontaine, Executive Director of the Open Door, Bob Gillis, President of Cape Ann Savings, and Peggy Haggerty-Steck, Executive Director of Action Inc. So welcome.
Hi, Kelly. Thanks for having us.
Oh, delighted that you are here. So to help start the conversation, what we'll do is we're going to pull a card from this deck of cards here, and each card has a different question about kindness. We'll read the question out loud, and then we'll just have a conversation. If the conversation stops before the show's over, we'll just pull another question. How's
Those
that?
cards are so cool. Did you make them? What?
A bunch of us had a brainstorm, and we created the deck, and we had them professionally designed and printed. So actually, they're for sale, but we'll talk about that later in the show. So they're a great tool for talking about kindness. Anyway, you want to pull a?
Sure.
All right, let's do it. Let's do it.
She looks like a professional.
Do you want to read it or should I read it?
Go ahead and read it.
Can gossip be kind? Does motive matter? Define gossip.
Well, that's a pretty good question.
Oh, that's lots of layers.
That's a lot of
Yeah.
layers. Maybe, who wants to define gossip? What does it mean to gossip?
It's a loaded word.
It is.
But for me, to say it's a negative word. If you're gossiping, you're not doing it for a good reason.
Right.
It's repeating something about someone else that's not necessarily motivated in kindness.
Yeah.
There are other words to describe sharing information on the you might want to know this spectrum. So
Yeah, I think so. I think you're right. I think it just has this underlying unkindness to it as a word. But so can you gossip and be kind at the same time? Like really gossip and be kind? I'm thinking no.
I do think, like you were saying, it's one thing to talk about something or someone out of concern, or maybe with another friend about, should we maybe say something, do something about something going on with another. But I think it crosses the line when it's something you wouldn't say to that person, or you're not really you're just talking to talk and you're not really gonna take action about it. I think usually when I think of different instances, if you have concern about something, you're talking with somebody else and your intent is to try to talk about it together to do something to help a situation, that's one thing. But if you're just always having that same conversation, then I think that's where it crosses over into just gossiping, talking for the sake of talking kind of thing.
Yeah, it boils down to intent. Why are you talking about someone who's not there? Right? That's what gossip is. Talking about someone who's not there. So.
I think people just like to talk about people. And
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily have to be negative. They want to talk about other people. But once it gets to the point of being exploitative, then gossip takes a negative turn.
Yeah.
But I think sometimes you'll see people just gossiping about harmless things that I don't always see a negative connotation to it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's neither kind or unkind. Sure.
well, I think maybe it depends on how it's set up. Like if you say, I probably shouldn't say this, but, not to be a gossip, but that might be that might be just a little reminder to yourself that you
Or
might
just between you and me.
Yes.
Yeah.
That might be that maybe you're crossing into a territory that that might be bordering on unkind.
Yeah.
Yeah, instead of did you hear, Jane's going to Florida? Oh, that's great. It's talk that's, consider that gossip because it's not. Yeah, somehow when people say gossip, they mean that negative talk, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I think it's generally understood as that. All right, someone want to pull another card?
All right, Julie, your turn.
All right,
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Don't mess
Back
up.
to my dealing days, right? Yeah. Cut that deck, right? Yeah. Okay. So if you see something inappropriate in public, is it a kind thing to infer?
Oh, I like that question.
So if you see something inappropriate, is the question, I guess maybe I would ask a clarifying question. If you see something inappropriate in public, is it a kind thing to infer that you know what's going on?
Is it infer or interfere? It should
Oh,
be
interfere. Oh, good. I don't have my
Because it
glasses
could
on.
be a
Interfere, yes.
It could be,
Yeah. Thank you, yes.
yeah. What do you think? If you see someone, I don't know, hitting a child in public, do you interfere? Do you walk by? They have a TV show about something like this.
Yes, they
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
So what do you do?
I think it's like you say, it's situational, and it's sort of funny to use the word kind, because say it is someone hitting a child. Well, the kind and right thing to do on the child's behalf is to try to do something that maybe diffuses it, or I think it depends on what's happening, but it might be embarrassing for the adult that's, so. But I think certain things cross the line behaviorally, where you should do something because it's, someone's at risk for harm, as opposed to just, say, embarrassment.
Yeah.
I think a good thing to do, as an example, if you see somebody littering, pick up that piece of litter for that person and say, I got this, I got it for you. No problem.
My brother does that all the time.
Somebody will chase somebody down and say, pick that up.
Yeah.
It's not,
Yeah.
that goes to
Yeah.
Peggy's point, you're gonna incite violence possibly, but you don't wanna just totally let it go either. Pick it up yourself and just let the person know, I got this, that's how you drop this.
Yeah. I saw you drop this. Yeah. Or, yeah, go ahead.
Well, I just was thinking of the quote of, I'll paraphrase, all it takes for evil to triumph is for good people to say nothing.
Yeah.
And so I think that sometimes we just so don't want to get involved, that we'll kind of look the other way on something. And it brings to mind, it's been probably 10 or 12 years ago now. My son and I were at the mall and we saw a man just tearing into his kid, beating him to the ground, calling him an idiot. And I walked by and my son looked at me and I looked at him and we're like, we're just not going to get involved. We're just going to keep going. And then we both stopped. And I thought I had to go tell at least the mall security. I didn't try to confront it on my own, but it just seems like, something inappropriate like that, it's a kindness to say something
Yeah.
in that situation.
Yeah, and it was probably the proper thing to do, to say it to somebody who could do something in a safer way than you could have done it, right? Yeah. Yeah.
What about if it's, so when you talk, the question has if it's inappropriate, so what if it's something that's not as extreme as like someone physically hurting someone? What if it's inappropriate in a different way?
Like somebody being mean to a waitress in a restaurant that you're at? Like really being
example.
awful to them?
Sure,
Like,
you see that.
do you say something to that person, or do you let it play out the way that it's going to play out?
I think it's the same thing. It depends on if it's someone just being rude or someone being verbally abusive. There's like a line
Yeah.
between that. I mean, I have in certain situations, because I think it depends. If you've got someone and they're not in a position to do something for themselves and someone's really overboard, they're not just complaining about the service, but it's really crosses into that line of being verbally abusive and it's completely inappropriate. And if there isn't someone around that say the manager or something to do something, I think sometimes you can say, finding those things to say that don't end up escalating things more.
Right.
Or if somebody tells an inappropriate joke or makes an inappropriate comment, that kind of stuff, I think you can say things without again making it worse, but just to kind of make the point, like, hey,
Yeah.
maybe just like, again, not to embarrass the person, but say something in a way that they get the idea that maybe what they said wasn't okay.
Yeah. That reminds me of a time I was with a group of people, and a cousin of mine I don't know if I should say that, but a cousin of mine, we're on TV. So a cousin of mine made an inappropriate joke, and it angered me, and I just turned to her and I said, please don't do that. And she continued to make those kind of jokes, and I said, well, if you're going to continue to do that, I'm going to have to leave. And she made one more joke, and I got up and left, and it, severed our friendship for a couple years. But it was like, and my heart was pounding when I was doing it because I was afraid. But
yeah, I think those things are always difficult, and the line is different for different people too. Things that I might find super offensive, you might not. So
Right.
it's like I think sometimes it is that individual sense of like, what's too much, what's too far, and some people I think are more comfortable with conflict than others. So if you're someone who can't really cope and it's difficult for you, then maybe you're not going to say the thing directly to the person, depending on what's going on. So I think there's that too. I mean, everyone's different, and I have friends and family who would have no problem saying something, and then I have friends and family who would have a huge problem, and it would be like very anxiety producing and difficult. So I think some of it's what you feel comfortable and able to do too.
mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's a gray area too. It's you don't know who the instigator
Yeah.
is. You don't know who's at fault, and it's tough to make a judgment in that situation. A lot of times it's gray. When it's clear, something should be done. You either talk to the mall cop, or you
Right.
talk to an
Yeah.
authority. Something should be done, or you talk to the person yourself. But oftentimes, oh boy, that in the waitress situation, there are nasty waitresses, there are nasty waiters, there are nasty customers. When you're jumping into it and seeing what's going on, who started it? Things like that. It's tricky.
It is tricky. It's a tricky area.
I think, my misreading the word in the beginning, though, actually brings up another point, and that is sometimes we see something happening and we're inferring from what we think we're seeing, and we might not know the entire story.
Right.
And so I think that it's important, operating from a base of kindness, to assume good intent until we have reason to know otherwise.
Yeah.
And I overhear things in the workplace. I overhear things different places, and I think I hear something, and I'll say, "What was that?" And then it'll be like, "Oh, it wasn't what I thought it was at all." So just making sure that we're getting the information that we need to context around what we think we've observed.
Yep.
All right.
My turn, Kelly?
I think you're up.
All right,
Here
okay.
you go. Pick a card, any card.
Wow, just like a pro.
I know, Julie, that's a little
Las
scary.
Vegas days.
I know.
Okay. Okay, how is kindness related to your personal values, community values, and how is it not? Very broad question.
It is a broad
How's it
question.
related to your personal values? I would just say for myself, I think I was fortunate to be brought up by two people who valued kindness, really, and, be nice to people. Pretty simple lesson. And there were consequences if you weren't.
Yeah.
So, from that standpoint, that's where I'd go. On the community side, we're all in the community every day. That's what we do. And, it's important. It's important to, to me, empathy is a big thing. You don't know when you're dealing with somebody, you don't know what somebody else is going through.
It's true.
You have no idea. And, somebody's having a bad day, they're giving you a hard time about this or that. Just remember, try to be empathetic and remember what they might be going through.
It's true,
If they're going
right.
through difficulties. So it's not easy to do, but a couple things to think about.
Yeah. Do you think everybody has kindness as a value consciously?
Not necessarily. I mean, or it might not be a high priority value for a lot of people. I mean, you see it every day, in everyday life.
Yeah. I mean, you can do crazy, unkind things and still have kindness as a value. No?
Sometimes for people it's they have kindness toward maybe their immediate circle or certain types of people, but not, generalized kind of like
That's a good point.
be kind to all. I mean, we see that with the programs we run. I've heard people say really hateful things about folks experiencing homelessness and other things. And so, I always get taken aback because, again, like Bob, my parents and my grandparents, I was raised to be kind to other people, to put yourself in other people's shoes, to, that someone always has it worse than you, and to be, sensitive to that. And we didn't grow up with a heck of a lot, but still, that's how we were always raised. So it's like that same thing, giving people the benefit of the doubt, or not assuming you know what's going on with that person, and because they look a certain way or are behaving in a certain way, that they're somehow not deserving of being treated with some dignity and respect and care or kindness. So I think I've seen people have situational kindness, I guess if that's the way to put it. And it would be great if, I think people could just take a second and think about if that was my child, my sibling, my parent, my favorite friend or whatever, and not assume that they understand everything about a person just because of what they have on or what their behavior might be,
Yeah, I think that happens a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My Rotary Club, I had a Rotarian that you probably know. You might too, Peggy. Peter Beecham. Remember Peter Beecham? We lost him last year, but great guy. But when he was the president of Rotary, every week he would start the meeting by saying, this was my random act of kindness.
Oh, I like that. Yes.
This week. Anybody else want to share what they did for a random act of kindness? And at the end of the meeting, he would always encourage people, do a random act of kindness, whatever it is, And I'll never forget that. That goes back 12, 13 years when he was president. But just simple, not hard to do,
Right.
but very effective.
Yeah.
I think that kind of piggybacks on what I was thinking when you read the question, and that was, kindness is a muscle, and I think it's something that you have to exercise. I think it's a consciousness and a choice in and of ourselves in our least evolved states. When we're children, everything is about us and me and, my immediate needs, whatever they are. And then as we continue to grow and our emotional intelligence grows, I think kindness is one of those things that you have to practice. Kelly, you and I have had this conversation before, but, sometimes, how do you show kindness as a boss? Who has to tell someone you've been late, 42 times in the last, 6 weeks. And, is it kind, you can do it with kindness. Mm-hmm. It's not unkind to have to hold someone accountable to something. Mm-hmm. And yet it can feel unkind when you're the one who has to be holding someone accountable. So I think kindness is a muscle. And
I totally agree with that. And I think it's hard to, there's so many times that it's difficult to be hard. Whether it's you don't want to come off as doing something mean, even though it might not be mean, like what you were talking about. Because I think holding people accountable is actually kind for both parties, even though the person you're holding accountable might feel angry or whatever emotion they have about being held accountable. In the long run, it is the only thing that will help shift them to a more appropriate way of acting. Or it might not. It might not shift them. But
honest and direct.
Right.
It's very important. Very important.
Yeah.
It's funny, I think like in our work especially, I feel like there are many opportunities all day long to be kind because, people are coming in and needing help and, regardless of whatever the situation is, I feel like we're lucky in that way because we have more ability to do that because of the type of work we do. And I can see how if you were maybe in a different line of work or you worked more in a solitary way or whatever, I think interacting with more people, especially people who are different from you in all kinds of ways, always broadens I think, people's perspective on others and makes people better and kinder in general. I think when there's when you have a lack of contact with people that you see as different, you have a lot of ideas about what that person's like or not like because of that. And I always notice when there's more of a mixing of people and groups, and when we have different, even when we do focus groups for different things, you really see a change in people because people are learning more about each other, and I think that can lead to more kindness in general because I think people aren't so judgmental when they see someone who's different and make certain assumptions because they've had some experiences with people not like themselves.
I would agree. Yes, I think your exposure to a broader community and exposure to the world. I think, Bob, I know you've taken some trips with Rotary. What does it do to you when you get outside of our country and you're someplace and you're helping, and it just broadens your perspective.
Absolutely.
And probably your capacity to be kind.
Yeah. Well, when you see dozens of little kids running around that have nothing, they have zero, and they're happy as can be. They're just it does really change your perspective about things. It's,
Yeah, and the community piece of it, I really do find this, and I've been in Gloucester maybe 5 years. It's one of the kindest places. There's like this thread of kindness, from wherever
it's nice
I go.
to hear. We're so entrenched that we don't necessarily see it as much as you
But
coming
really,
from the outside.
do you see it?
Yeah, I think we talk about this sometimes when big issues come up.
Yeah.
Gloucester is unique in that way because I think people are much more willing to work with other people and dig in on something. So, for instance, with like the opioid crisis, when that hit here, I felt like we were more ready. People had always been working together on a bunch of things. So when people had to mobilize to do something difficult and try to parse out like what to do about what aspects of the problem, I mean, people did respond, I think, with kindness. There was compassion for people who were experiencing it. There was compassion for their family members. There was compassion for law enforcement, everybody who was dealing with it very directly, and like, how can we all do better, or what can we do differently collectively so I do think people talk about that a lot about Gloucester when you go outside of here, about how it's unique and in the way that folks sort of step up and volunteer. There's a lot of volunteerism on important city groups and boards and things at nonprofits, and I feel like there's always a good solid core of people that do have that immediate reaction, is to help, to do something for others, which I think is kindness in action.
Sure.
Well, you're both going to see it more than most in your fields. You both work with organizations that define kindness, really, serving incredibly important needs in our community, and to see the success of your organizations, both for your leadership, but also for the people that rally around what you do. What better definition of kindness is there than that, really? You see it every day.
Yeah, I think it is funny though. I'm sure don't you hear that when you're at different larger coalitions or outside of here, people talk about Gloucester in that way.
They often say Gloucester is unique, and
More ways than one.
Exactly. Well, I think of another issue that we kind of rallied around. It was probably almost 5 years ago now. That we were taking a look at the day shelter on Sundays, and Action came to the table, Grace Center came to the table. Our mayor just got us all in the room, open door was there, and said, we've got to do something about this. And so we open on Sundays now, and everyone does a little bit of what they do best to make a community solution.
Yeah.
So in that way, I think kindness is informing community solutions. And, we don't all have to kind of do our own brand of something, but we all have core competencies and strengths. So, we can provide this, and Action provides this, and Grace Center provided, that, and now it just happens.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do think that's true here. Having worked in different communities from Gloucester, I do. And people talk about whether it's because we're on an island or because we're of a certain size, but I just think somehow whatever draws people here is also the type of folks it draws, whatever that spirit is of doing and helping others. I think we see it across the board in every kind of program we do. It's not just the shelter or just some of our other services. Like, no matter who you're working with, I think people are always willing to do what they can and go the extra mile. And also, Bob as a private person and not in a nonprofit for a business. I mean, there are lots of community leaders outside of the nonprofit sector who always step up and jump in to do something, and the city as well. There's lots of great people. So I feel like there's a lot of people in town that you can count on when something comes up where you can pick up the phone.
Absolutely.
And they'll be like, yeah, okay, let's figure it out. Let's do it, and people are willing to do the right thing by the folks that live in town. If there's a need, people want to do something about it.
Yeah. But I think there's something to be said too about the services offered through the bank and the tellers and the people who work directly with people who come in. There's just a kindness that threads through that as well.
Sure.
And
Sure.
it trickles down.
Yep.
I believe in that kind of trickle down theory.
No, it's really important. People that you want your staff to be friendly and kind, and it pays dividends when they do, because people are kind in return typically.
Yeah, right.
And just makes the workday better, makes
Right.
it a more enjoyable experience altogether, and that's exactly what you look for, and that's what we strive for. So.
Well, and that teller, that might be the one positive interaction somebody has all day, or even all week if they're an isolated person. So
Sure.
you never know what
Right.
that small
Right.
gesture can do in somebody else's life that has meaning, So it's not like it's that hard. We just have to remember to do it.
You made
As
a point. That's a
people,
good point,
you
Peggy.
know?
It's a small gesture.
Yeah.
It doesn't take that much, just to smile to somebody, to
Yeah.
ask them how they're feeling, whatever it is. It's not that hard, but it can make all the difference for somebody. It's
Yeah.
true.
Well, and I think conversely, how we all feel if we have a negative interaction with someone.
Sure.
You walk out, then you just, kick the tire, and you're mean to the next person, and
Right.
and so it can set off like a domino effect for the
Yeah.
day, and it's all because someone didn't take a moment to be kinder in their interaction.
Yeah.
So I like the idea of multiplying kindness with little acts little acts of kindness at a time.
Yeah. Huh. Well, we are out of time. So the first show has officially just ended. Thank you all for joining me and all of us. And I want to thank you for joining us today. And we hope this conversation finds its way into your home, workplace, or wherever you socialize. If you'd like to purchase a deck of cards, they're available through the Kindness Project at the-kindness-project.org. Don't forget the dashes. And you can use them to enhance school curriculum. They can be used in team building, maybe in a staff meeting. Conversation starters at social gatherings. Use them at the dinner table with your children. So we're just asking a $25 donation, and you can purchase the deck online. So again, thank you so much for joining us. I just want to let you know that the mission of the Kindness Project is to guide already kind communities into a deeper dive into what kindness means to ourselves, to our families, and to the community at large. So thank you for joining us.